Allow me to beg your indulgence for one moment. This is the artist formerly known as Damian Sandow, now known as Aaron Stevens, and you're listening to the Talk and Roll Express with Lewis, Thomas, Oliver, and Cameron, covering everything from murder mysteries to union stabs and always getting the job done straight from the enclosed pool area. You're welcome.
Right, guys. Clash of the Champions 23. Initial impressions of this show.
Cameron, would you like to go first? Would you like to set the tone?
If it wasn't the best goddamn wrestling show we've ever watched.
Yes.
No, I mean it's a B. Well, I don't know what in the context of that era of business it would have been, but like we would probably contextualize something like this as a B pay-per-view nowadays. And I mean, I think it comes at a point where a lot of the stars are red hot. There's maybe not a lot going on story wise, whether that be due to some stuff we'll get into or not. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I felt like there was a few mismatches. A lot of people trying to be pushed over. We had a lot of stars, people that were red hot versus people who were simply quite not, things like that. But yeah, excited to talk about it.
Yeah, same. Like I said this before we started recording. It felt to me like a house show. A glorified house show, but not in a bad way, because it was nice. We kind of like a palate cleanser, as you're saying, Cam. There wasn't a lot of kind of like big stories in that involved. It was just quite entertaining matches.
Yeah, for me as well, it was exactly the same. I mean, looking at the card, there was a lot to get excited about, and I think there's obviously a few negative points and a few sticking points that obviously we're going to get onto. But I think by and large, it's just a case of right, let's go for it. There's going to be some wrestling. You got an hour and a half. And let's get through this as quick and best as we can, which was quite, again, with that episode WCW we watched from '85, it was just quite refreshing, especially in like the first like rushes of it. It was just really good to see a big man picking up and slamming another big man.
That's all I look for in life.
Yes. I'm easily pleased.
That's my search history in one description.
Right, well, starting off, we have Ron Simmons versus Dick Slater. Now, even in the kind of the pre-match little hype package that they have at the start, they say that this wasn't even supposed to be Ron Simmons versus Dick Slater. It was supposed to be Ron Simmons versus Paul Orndorff, but obviously Paul got injured prior to this, so it's kind of booked on the fly. I take it they already had the kind of the opening graphics made before this happened, obviously. But I didn't like this opening match as much as I liked the rest of the card. You guys jump in.
The tempo was a bit off for me. It was very stop-start, and I feel like it didn't get going.
It felt like a replacement match.
I mean, yeah. I don't personally think it's as bad as it could have been. Ron Simmons was red hot at this point, just over as all hell, and that kind of carried the match. But it also kind of made me feel the Paul Orndorff gap a little bigger, because I mean, it's Paul Orndorff. You could have just imagined the sort of crowd reaction that we could have got, but I think, all things considered, it wasn't that bad. It was hard not to get caught up in the energy of the crowd and the energy emanating from Ron Simmons himself. Personally, again, trying not to be biased, but I just thought it was great.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge mark for Ron Simmons as it is, but again, it was almost shocking to see how over he was. I don't think many people have been that over since. Just the way he got the whole crowd waving along with him. Just how ridiculously, not over, just how wired in with the crowd he was. It was absolutely amazing. And yeah, it could have been a lot worse in terms of an opening match. But it could have been a bit better for me.
Yeah, it was a fine match. I didn't think it was necessarily a bad match. It was just maybe for your opening match, it didn't really set the tempo you were maybe kind of hoping for. But as you were saying, like Ron Simmons was over as hell, and it's good to go back and see stuff like that, because this is a guy that really should have just been kind of like pushed to the moon. When he goes, obviously, it does become a fairly big star still in the Fed and that, and a very interesting character. But when he first got there, Gladiator gimmick and stuff, you're like, is this the same guy, really? But it's good to go back and see stuff like this and see how good he really was.
I mean, the thing we've got to remember is that I don't think fully 12 months past the point where he became the first black world heavyweight champion. It's a dodgy line to kind of walk here when I say this, but I'm not really sure what the motivation behind it was. If it was, I believe personally, in my heart of hearts, it was more than well deserved. He was a hard worker for years in that company, and it was rightfully his. Was it a token? I hate to use that word. Not too sure, to be honest, but I think it speaks volumes, seeing is that this is where he is in the card less than 12 months later. And I they just, it's clear that they couldn't deny him at one point, put up with him being the champion for a very short period of time. And we're still feeling the fallout of that come this card here.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from there. And I know what you mean when you're saying you don't want to sound like disparaging towards him by using certain words, but I don't think you are. It's a case of like, WCW shouldn't be patting themselves on the back for doing a first. And even the first is disputed because another world champion that could be, we'll get it, that's another story. But the fact that WCW is saying, well, this is our first black belt champion, good. That should be Ron Simmons' achievement, not yours as a company.
Especially that late in the game. Wrestling. It's really bizarre. Like I was into either 80s wrestling or Attitude Era forward. It's only been in the past, I would say, 24 months where I really took a deep dive into the early 90s. But the weird thing, there's points in this evening where they're referencing the NBA and Michael Jordan, and then it just feels like wrestling at this point's a time capsule, like, of an era gone by, which is rich for me to be saying because obviously I long for said era. But it felt like at this point it really had to move on, even though the product that WCW were putting out wasn't as sort of child orientated at this point. It just felt stale.
Yeah. It's funny though, if we're talking about like first stuff, I'm just googling that guy. Was it Bobo Brazil was credited as the first African American world champion? Is that correct? There was something before Ron Simmons. I'm sure it was him. But just say for Ron Simmons' sake, it was WCW, early 90s. But then they get that in WWF till last year.
Yeah. It feels very, very behind the curve. And I feel like if you had the strap on him for longer and you did more with it, it might have had a more long-running ripple effect on the business.
Yeah, no, you could. It was probably you're round about the other the runs. Even though geographically, the Rodney King stuff is obviously like in a different part of the country, an almost different culture. It's still around about the same era we're moving on to. I don't really know what they could have done storyline wise, but even just having him as a figurehead, he was clearly over. It wouldn't have done any harm. I love Barry Windham. We'll get onto it. I love Barry Windham, but at this point, hell, he's more of a token champion than Ron was the previous year. At this point, it looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's quite interesting with having this discussion now. If you still kind of followed the documentaries and anything like that, you'll know WCW went through a fairly string of horrible mismanagement in the kind of the early 90s. There was Jim Herd, and then Ole Anderson and Bill Watts was booked. Now, if memory serves, I want to say that this is happening under kind of Bill Watts' watch. And I'm sure Jim Ross has talked about this in kind of future episodes of his podcast and stuff like that, where he's talked about how Bill Watts was a huge sports guy. Like he lobbied really, really hard for anybody that had a kind of legitimate background in athletics. And obviously Ron Simmons was it 3-time Florida State champion or something like that. Jesus, you look at the guy, he's an athlete. Isn't that so? Of course, it's like if anybody. Well, I would want to put the belt on, Ron. I can't imagine why they didn't put the Winged Eagle on Farouk in the late 90s. To tell you the truth, in terms of heel and face, he works perfectly as both.
and it's a testament to the guy's sort of wrestling mind where, and I personally don't believe that by the time he goes to play Farouk that he's past the sort of momentum that he's displaying in this match. I think he's playing a face here and a heel when he's Farouk, and if anything, that's a testament to the guy. I really like the contrast. Actually, it's just popped in my head. Later on the night, we'll be seeing Too Cold Scorpio. Going off against Barry Windham, and he's obviously been pushed as this athletic guy. I mean, I felt like even though Ron Simmons maybe wasn't doing a flip or whatever, that the athleticism on show from Ron Simmons was far more superior than that of Too Cold Scorpio.
Yeah, easy.
Right, moving on, we have Marcus Bagwell versus Steven Regal. I'm surprised was the words that came to mind watching this. I mean, you've got drop toe holds, you've got chain wrestling. Oh my god!
We really do not see enough drop toe holds in wrestling.
No, I love that. And I love watching Steven Regal in this match. It was crisp without being fluid, if that makes sense. I mean, it was fluid without being crisp. It was hard to tell. There was something quite rugged about it. Something quite off. It didn't seem choreographed, put it that way. It was almost like in the case of, I'm going to do this move and you're going to react to it, rather than let's arrange to do these moves. I thought it worked well for it. It was almost like it did feel more like a competition.
Just think there was one spot where Bagwell gave Regal an Irish whip and he just sort of like flipped into it as well. It was a case, it really did feel like it was basically fuck around and find out.
Yeah. And we've all got opinions of Marcus Bagwell, I'm sure, but he looked $1,000,000, as the old saying goes here. He looked incredible.
Well, when he first came out, I was like, is that Davey Boy? No, that's this one. Oh my god, Marcus Bagwell.
It's really weird, man, because it's one of those, looking at Marcus Alexander Bagwell, as he was introduced, you look at him and he looks the finished article, he looks the masterpiece, he looks like you could have put the strap on him there and then and ran with him through to like 2003 without anybody complaining. And we're like 7 years off Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. It's such a dead space of time that you've gone from this athlete, this man, to some guy in a top hat trying to rescue his mom off a forklift. I can't pass it. I can't compute. These are two different people.
It's the wee goatee he went and grew. It was like the Samson effect in a way.
It was bad.
OD
was bad.
I just want to go out on a limb, come out of left field a little bit, and say that I wasn't a humongous fan of this match. Anything that Steven Regal does, I'm a big fan of, but I just think there's a couple of things that happened in the match where you could tell that for Marcus Bagwell anyway, it was quite clear he had never came across that style before, and ergo was quite green. It made him look more green than he had to be. Like, it looked like he was more than capable of going for a good match, but it was maybe just like a style clash for me. Steven Regal tried to do all this stuff, and then Bagwell was just like, what the fuck's a drop toe hold? How am I supposed to react to this? The roll up at the end, stuff like that, it was just a little bit choppy. But at the end of the day, just that style, it's nice to see it on that size of stage, but I just think there's much better examples of it in that year alone and moving forward as well from Regal.
Oh, definitely. I mean, but one of the things I liked about this, like I was saying, Regal did this transition move, I think it was across the back, and it just didn't look slick. And that's what I liked about it. There was something dead, just like kind of almost off the cuff about it. It didn't feel like a choreographed match, which I quite enjoyed.
It just like Regal showed up for a fight.
Yeah.
Regal is the man in this. I think the word for me here is dissonance. Like there's something not translating over to Bagwell. He's not being able to hit the beats quite on time, and I think it shows and stops the match from reaching its full potential. But either way, it was super cool to see Bagwell at this point of his career look like $1,000,000. Regal looked great. Was totally on point with his character and stuff, but he was just capable of so much more at this point.
So basically, Ollie, what Cammy's trying to say there in so many words is he doesn't believe Marcus Bagwell should be given the strap at this point and carried it all the way to 2003.
Well, I mean, with prior evidence and the gift of hindsight, I would agree that Marcus Bagwell should not be given anything. But in terms of looks and aesthetic, yes, absolutely. He looks the part here.
Which is what I was loving about this, the fact that he said 2003 would suggest Marcus Bagwell would have actually saved WCW from under.
Marcus Bagwell, in that form, in that guise, the Monday Night Wars just wouldn't have happened. It would be like Monday Night Marcus or something. But growing that god-awful goatee and calling himself Buff Bagwell, which I remember I had WCW Mayhem when I was a boy and the PS1. I remember seeing the name Buff Bagwell and I just thought that's a fucking stupid name. I didn't say fuck when I was 6, but
it's not a stupid name for a gigolo, however.
Oh, it's a great name for a gigolo.
Yeah,
Allegedly a great name for a gigolo.
Well, Buff Bagwell did go into that line of work. Not allegedly.
Oh, is it not allegedly? That's fine.
No.
He should have called himself Buff Shagwell. Like, you're already like 99% of the way there. Just little bit of help over the line.
Muff Shagwell.
I was going to change my name in the chat to Buff Shagwell.
Just while we're on the topic, I think Buff Bagwell in his later career at WCW, I mean, I don't think he should have been, like you said, he shouldn't be given anything, let alone a wrestling belt. a belt to prove his accolades in wrestling. But yeah, I mean, I can remember watching him sometime around the era of the Youngbloods. Was it the Youngbloods versus the? Come
New
on,
Blood.
fill the gaps. New Bloods versus yeah. And it was him versus my lord, gaps in memory. I've got so many horrible ways to get you to get a reference. I was going to go in a wheelchair. Killed Miss Elizabeth.
Lex Luger.
Allegedly. So he's up against Lex Luger, who at this point is illustrating all the reasons as to why I'm not the biggest fan of Lex Luger.
Callum, I need to interrupt just to clarify for the audience at home and the lawyers watching. Are you allegedly saying he fought Lex Luger or allegedly something else?
Well, a bit of both, to be honest with you.
We don't want to accuse anybody of having a wrestling match with Lex Luger. We don't want to get into that sort of business.
I could just remember Lex Luger coming in at his most half-assed, not even wearing ring gear, just some fucking dodgy track bottoms. But then here comes Buff Bagwell shooting the pistols and being the man. And then they have a flex off where like Buff Bagwell's giving it all to the camera and stuff like that. And he just turns around and then Lex Luger gives it a half-assed sort of flex, just like But then Buff Bagwell sells it so well, like he's just seen like the body of Christ. It's one of my favourite fucking moments in the entirety of the end of WCW, to be honest with you. Like, he was a brilliant mid-carder. Even at this point, you know, value's there, but, Mike, you know, I would not erase him for wrestling history. That's my stance on Buff Bagwell.
So basically you're saying is Buff Bagwell is slightly above Chris Benoit in the stakes of wrestling history?
Well, I mean, it's one of those because people say, why doesn't Benoit get Hall of Fame? And the answer's pretty obvious. But what we really need to be asking is, why doesn't Buff Bagwell get Hall of Fame?
I think you could also argue that the answer's even more glaringly obvious.
I mean, they've put like Donald Trump in 5 times, and that guy's a piece of shit. So surely there's room in the room in the boat for Buff Bagwell.
Sorry, I thought he was about to say, why isn't Chris Benoit in the Hall of Fame? Because clearly we haven't managed to get to Buff Bagwell yet, which is a worthy induction. You know what I mean? Like, we can't let Chris in if Buff isn't in yet. Come on, guys.
We're all joking, but see if we tweeted Buff Bagwell and said you fancy coming on the show, he'd probably do it.
Should we get Buff? I mean, not even like one that's got a Buff Bagwell match in it. Just watch like SummerSlam 2005 and just be like, Buff, what did you think?
Gives us an anecdote how he's at home with his mum at this point. Not getting paid.
Fucking spending an hour roasting Buff Bagwell.
We should do that for the Christmas special. The Talking Roll Express roast of Buff Bagwell.
Just bully him until he goes offline. Make fun of his calf implants and over-defined traps.
Hey, but he can do a good job. Just ask Russell.
Oh.
So yeah, it was a good match.
So, G-Man versus Max Payne. Now, this is an unofficial match, an unofficially sanctioned match, and this happens after Max Payne shoots the Bad Blaster in Johnny B. Bad's face, causing him to...
Yeah, I love that, man. I just love how, like, again, the ridiculousness of the WWFE into the late 90s obviously is a real high watermark. But the fact that some guy just gets shot in the face is brilliant. But as well, again, Bischoff sells it so well. And obviously, you know, with the gift of hindsight and, you know, kayfabe and the curtain call and the modern era, it's kayfabe. Obviously, back then, it's just like this guy's been shot in the face and Bischoff is losing his shit. And what I loved is during was it the Two Cold Scorpio? I think it was. And Tony Schiavone was just like, you can call this like premium rate number to find out how he's doing.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And this is the end of kayfabe as well. You can imagine his friends and family saying, "Oh, I try to phone him, and I phone this number."
You alright, pal? Aye, man. Fucking doing alright, eh?
But just as you mentioned Schiavone there, oh, how much I miss Jesse Ventura on comms.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I say now we brought that up. How good was Schiavone and Ventura? Like, how good was their rapport with one another?
Brilliant.
Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Honestly, I mean, everybody's always about Gianna the King, and I get that. But for me, maybe it's because I watched it a bit younger and grew up at a different time as well. But I mean, Jesse Ventura to me is the best colour commentator. It really is.
I can't point to a single pay-per-view or show that I've watched where I've questioned why he was there, which is a lot. Like I could say a lot less about other commentators.
It's just he's very, very good at getting the heel over. And he's like, oh, I think that's an illegal move and all that. He's such a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just sits there and he's a bastard. Because like Lawler is, he's like a heel colour commentator, but he gets too excited. He just like, it's like having a dog just like obviously barking and trying to shag Tori Wilson.
Yeah.
Again,
it's almost
Ventura's just being a shit.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to colour commentator, man. I think he's just showing up and started being a dick.
I love how physically imposing he is over Tony Schiavone.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he looks like every time Tony looks at him, he looks emasculated.
I mean, the guy was not called a body for nothing. Let's be honest. I mean, the guy was, you know. But I mean, that's the guy. You watch him. You listen to Gorilla Monsoon. He's fantastic. You listen to McMahon. He's fantastic. And I like McMahon's commentary. To be honest with you, I know he gets shat on, but I think he's very entertaining. Gorilla Monsoon's a great commentator, but Jesse Ventura is just so good. And you said, Ollie, he's just a total bastard. He's always just putting the heel up. You know, he's always just fucking like pushing the heel and trying to get him over. And it's the wee things he does.
Yeah. I like the commentary position as well. The fact they were just sat at like a card table, and it was one of those weird connections that you can see them, and you can see them talking as well. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's those guys. Those are the guys talking about the match. I just liked again. I like the ramp as well.
Before we start talking about the wrestling again, you've also seen Repossessed. I take it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesse
Oh,
Ventura's cameo in that is awesome. Him and Mean Gene doing commentary on the exorcism of Leslie Nielsen and Linda Blair.
I haven't actually seen that. I'll need to. What a shame.
Cameo, it's basically, long story short, it's basically like an Airplane Naked Gun spoof, but also a sequel to The Exorcist, but Linda Blair is in it.
Oh wow. Yeah. No, I'm aware of it. I just haven't. For some reason,
awesome.
not made time for it. Yeah.
I mean, basically, we're talking about Jesse Ventura. Anybody that gets fired for trying to start a union is just over for life with all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine they brought Ventura back now to the commentary? And he's sitting going like this, and the Miz has got Johnny Morris in a headlock. And what do you think? Did you think the Miz was involved in the assassination of JFK?
I just, I don't know. Like, there is a. I've not watched it, but I have seen a clip of him coming back for like an old school Raw with Mr. McMahon in his red bow tie.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how much of a leash he was on, that evening, because he was quite a subversive figure at that point, politically as well, to be brought back.
Well, he also sued them, didn't he? Yeah, he was a special guest referee.
There was a whole dispute. I remember, I think I read the story, Vince did not want him to go and do Predator in 87.
Yeah.
He basically said, and obviously he did, ironically enough, he ended up joining SAG as a result of doing Predator, which is the Screen Actors Guild, which is a union. And so, he ended up he got his way in the end, which thank God.
Because I think he tried to sue the Fed as well for royalties on videos and stuff like that. And McMahon's like, no.
I think that's what
he's doing the rest of the pension.
I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why you can no longer see the main. Did you guys ever watch the Mania of WrestleMania when you were younger? The documentary. It's really good. All the film, like actual film, like HD, really good quality clips of WrestleMania 19 comes from that film. Like they were going to make a movie out of it, and it was voiced over by Jesse the Body Ventura, and it was brilliant. It used to be on the bonus of WrestleMania, either maybe 21 or 20, one of the two, and but I can't find it anywhere online anymore.
Yeah. If anybody is ever interested, you should probably pick up a copy of Titan Sinking, which is the book by James Dixon. It sort of details everything from around about 98 to 98 in the Austin era, and how it basically, wrestling, it falls on its arse and then it picks itself right back up again. There's a segment in the first book when obviously it goes into very good detail about the Vince Jesse situation, and there was the whole, court settlement for and as Jesse and Vince are leaving the court, Vince audibly screams at Jesse, that's my fucking money.
Do you know, am I the only person surprised that Vince didn't turn that into a bit more of a storyline? That you could have like a faction that's like these unionized wrestlers come to the ring with like pickets and stuff, a picket line around the ring, and people start like breaking to get to the match.
Yeah, but that was when Vince was still very much in his kind of power suits stage. Like he hadn't gone full post 97 unironic Vince McMahon yet.
In true Vince nature, he waited until the wrestlers were truly beaten, roughly about 2009 to 2012, like the CM Punk era. I can remember there was like a show where the whole of Raw walked off, apart from the big stars, because obviously they're taken care of. And then they continue the night on without everyone else because fuck you, that's why, kind of thing. It's like art imitating life. Like Vince is basically just saying, by the way, I will do this in real life if you all just decide to fuck off, which is quite lovely. But obviously he waits years later until wrestlers literally have no say in anything, and to actually pull someone off like that.
And we can all give Vince a hard time, and rightfully so, for the whole unionising thing. There's other promoters out there. There's other wrestlers. There's nothing to stop it happening, really. But no promoter wants it.
Yeah, not just him. It's a good point, really. I think, if anything, the people, like, for instance, like a Tony Khan in AEW, is like, because obviously their whole marketing is trying to be for the wrestler and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, if you really are, then why didn't you, instead of coming out with a gimmick each week on how you're helping wrestlers, why didn't you just outright start a union and then just go on with being a wrestling brand as opposed to playing politics in the news every single week with a different sort of, like a political campaign or something like that? It's a bit ridiculous. But Clash of Champions, yeah.
To keep us tied to this theme as well, Buff Bagwell, Wikipedia, lawsuit against WWE. On August 9th, 2016, Bagwell filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court of Connecticut against the WWE for royalties from material he's featured in on the WWE network. The lawsuit was dismissed in December 2017. This not only is this about wrestlers unionising, this is about getting justice for our boy Buff.
Even in real life, he's not going over, man. Sorry, I'm just imagining like a cut of his face.
I just love as well. He sued them like he's expecting like millions for appearing in like the Judy Bagwell on a forklift match.
To be fair, any royalties he would get from the network is probably through us.
That's what we. I reckon before listening to this, people have forgotten who Buff Bagwell is.
They should see
just read the podcast. I've probably mounted in his wall.
Should we rename ourselves the Buff Bagwell Mysteries?
We should. Vince McMahon owns those calves now.
The implants, like he's got them like nailed on his wall.
Vince McMahon's probably injected them into his head. He's had them melting down for his new face.
All traps, no calves. The Buff Bagwell story.
Oh God.
I'm just making fun of his bodybuilding now. I'm not commenting on his in-ring work at all. Just
let's find a video of him squatting. Let's talk about that form.
I'm just trying to hit him where it hurts, man. Because clearly he didn't give a fuck about his in-ring skills.
Nah.
He had a lot of his mum, though.
I'm kidding, by the way. I've put him over and at the same time buried him, but only just because that's the pattern we're rolling with now. But I don't mind a bit of Bagwell.
Buff, if you're listening, we're sorry.
Swole.
And let's look up. I'm really fucking sorry, by the way.
Oh, I know. I'm so sorry.
It's a good job nobody does listen to us.
You were saying this?
What was I saying? Yes, I was saying Too Cold Scorpio versus Barry Windham for the NWA title.
I was disappointed with this match. I was really looking forward to it because I thought to myself, I like Too Cold Scorpio, I like Barry Windham, this will be good, and I thought it was alright.
So I mean, it's doing exactly what it has to, like clearly Too Cold Scorpio's face and Windham's like heel kind of thing, and it's just, you know, like it does that job well, but like I don't think there is an overarching story here. I believe like they're doing the thing where it's weird though. It's I'm right in saying that Windham looked like a heel here, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, because the storyline leading up to this event, I'm pretty sure was Arn and Rick, who are definitely, I'm pretty sure heel. Well, it's a pretty heel thing to do. They're trying to get Barry back in as part of the Four Horsemen because he's got the belt now. So we do love you, Barry. Like that's, you know, it's just a lot of clashing and I don't know. I love Barry Windham, but he's kind of past his best here. He's got a lot of knee issues and stuff, and it would kind of plague him for the rest of his career.
Yeah, do you know what this felt like to me? This felt like when Scorsese got the Oscar. It's not he didn't deserve it. It's just a case of, was it the right time to give him it?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a perfect analogy, I would say, at this point, because there's just not much you can do with it. I saw what they were trying to do, like, Too Cold Scorpio's face, because obviously he's doing all his mad flippy stuff, and then the heel just kills the momentum. But it felt like there was too much killing of momentum, and then at the end, it was like they were trying to cram everything in, which didn't make any sense. So Too Cold Scorpio was doing all these massive big moves, which in the context of WCW, NWA, are total finishers, one after the other, and Barry just goes, nah. Yeah. Like, it's kind of weird.
I don't think Too Cold gets the credit that he probably deserves for being kind of one of the forefathers of the whole cruiserweight wave in America. Like, in terms of nobody was doing the stuff he was doing at that time.
No.
I mean, there's
That was
a
great.
spot towards the end where he pulls the rope and he does the 450 over it and he lands on his fat. Nobody was doing that at that time.
No, and it's important where he was doing it as well, because remember, WCW went on to be this integral part of bringing the cruiserweights in and stuff like that. And I don't feel like I'm just talking to a wall now. I don't feel like
Thomas, your biggest
would-
showing.
I don't feel like they would have done it if it hadn't been for people like Too Cold Scorpio kind of forging the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Yeah, initially, because I think retroactively, Windham's kind of been. I don't know how this was his only reign. Well, he's actually swept under the rug in the grand scheme of history. But it's like, well, initially when they started, I was like, why did they put the belt on Windham? Because I didn't know a whole lot about the Four Horsemen. But obviously, you see the match start and you're like, oh, he can work. Yeah, no, absolutely. I get why they put the strap on him.
I can't hear you, by the way, when I leave the room.
Oh, that's right.
The weird thing about the Four Horsemen is that, I mean, it worked. So, like, the point of, like, an organization like that, isn't it? Like, every single wrestling documentary now that they talk about says, oh, the point of a faction is that someone spirals out and becomes the guy. Well, they kind of started with the guy. So it shouldn't have worked, really. If anything, it should have buried Arn, it should have buried Tully, it should have, it just, you know,
That's a very interesting. Do you know, that's a very interesting point. You mentioned that because many factions, some of the most successful factions, started off with the guy. NWO had Hogan, BX has Shawn. I know you're saying if you get kind of the Shield, for example, you don't think it can break out one, but
I think Barry's problem, right, is that in the Four Horsemen, there's a big shadow to try and step out of, and when you're competing in that shadow next to Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard at the same time, being Barry Windham, who, by the way, wasn't like an original member, which I think's half his problem as well. He was. If it's like the Horsemen peaked, but at the same time, Ole kind of dropped out and Barry took his place. But then that peak is obviously, like in any sort of like instance, it's very finite. And then it sort of spiraled out once Tully and Arn left to go to the Fed. So like, he didn't spend that much time in the sun as far as of being as part of the biggest faction ever. As far as the WWF is concerned, when they inducted him in the Hall of Fame, Barry was like a big part of it. But in reality, if you go back and watch a weekly NWA episodes, Barry wasn't actually in it for a very long time in its peak.
And the thing about that as well, Cam, you mentioned, is a very good point, because you've got Allen at this point, you've got Ric Flair, and if you want to try and position somebody as being the new Horseman, like a breakout star, you've got a guy winding down his career. It doesn't really kind of work. And I like Barry Windham as much as the next person, but 93 is a kind of case of, right, let's just give him the belt because he kind of deserves it. He's the guy who should have had the belt early in his career.
It's like he never could have had it because Flair was already there, and it's Flair kind of thing. I mean, if it wasn't going to be Flair, it was going to be Magnum. Magnum left. They had to establish Sting, and then where was the room for anyone else after that? Really, the guy was Tully, in my opinion. Arn had some great promos, but like they were quite, if anything, they're great because there's not so many of them. If you watch NWA, WCW, World Championship Wrestling weekly show, Tully is on that like constantly. It's clear that they were grooming him to be a big part of, you know, the brand, but he jumped ship, and I don't really think that I don't want to call Barry an afterthought, but that almost seems the way the booking went, almost.
Yeah.
They should have made Buff Bagwell the Fourth Horseman.
God, there's so many versions of the Four Horsemen that I'm not even sure he wasn't at this point.
I actually had to sit and think my Rolodex and go, was he? Was he actually the Four Horsemen?
He was in the NWA, wasn't he?
Oh, come on, I was fucking NWA at one point.
Yeah, true.
For the record, Paul Roma is in the Four Horsemen during the time of this show. So, you know, for what it's worth.
Five Horsemen?
Was Ole Anderson's reason for not, well, did he not, That's a kind of off-screen
Ole Anderson's Ole Anderson. He doesn't need a fucking reason for anything. He's just forever been a negative bastard who just happens to be in one of the greatest factions of all time. But the story... Sorry, keep going.
He had serious personality clashings with Rick. Let's leave it at that, shall we?
Mate, you're talking about the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. Like, a man who is infamous, like... To this, my favourite Ole stuff is basically just screen caps of like shoot videos where all the horsemen are reunited and everyone's talking like that, and then Ole's just sitting in the corner like this, cashing the paycheck.
Ole and Rick is kind of like Superintendent Chalmers gone to Skinner's house for some steamed hams, you know.
It's yeah, Ole is almost fascinating just out of like, I don't really care about his wrestling person or his character or anything. I'm more into the road stories where he makes everyone around him fucking miserable. I aspire to that. My favourite Ole Anderson story, just quickly, is that he forgot that he named Arn Anderson. Like he came back, he came back to being the Horseman, and they go, "You don't mind working with this young fella, do you?" He says that he was like, you know, a protege, and yeah, you gave him the name Anderson, and he goes, and then he goes, "Well, I don't fucking do that." What? And then he watches a match and goes, "Well, clearly I did." You know, look at the guy, just brilliant, man. I love a bit of Ole.
Not underselling. If you put Ole Anderson in the YouTube search bar, one of the top results is a sit-down interview with Ricky Morton from the Express, and every other word is just fucking shit and goddamn. So you know that sums up Ole pretty well.
I just, again, like, the thumbnails below that will be him just sitting in a corner like this of Horseman Review, and it's my favourite thing in the planet.
Vince Russo once said that the least interesting thing about wrestling was actually the wrestling itself. He was saying when it came to the Monday Night Wars and stuff for that in Raw, the highest rated segments were the angles in that. And everybody's like, no, what's up with the matches, the fences and blah, blah, blah. But then you go to YouTube and other shoot interviews and stuff. Maybe he's got some sort of point. People would have been interested in the dutter wrestling, the behind the scenes stuff, and all the kind of like drama and soap opera antics to it. And they're like, oh, a match, cool.
So in the early sort of 2010s, with the you could argue there was like the advent of like community fueled wrestling content kind of thing with What Culture and whatever else. Like, I didn't watch wrestling then, but I started religiously looking up, like, that was the first time I looked up shoot interviews and the drama and stuff like that, you know, that wasn't WWE produced or something like that. Because before then, it would have been like hard copies of whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's whereas people forget it's not been that, it's because it's been an almighty explosion of content and people jumping on the bandwagon, including your friendly hosts of a certain podcast. But yeah, it's wrestling. Community fueled content isn't that old, and even in that, like, you know, the curtain of kayfabe, I feel like only truly fell maybe like within the last 10-15 years.
Yeah, in terms of shooting interviews, and that's a fair point, especially with that kind of YouTube era, and it became so accessible. Before that, people were paying like 20 quid and stuff for a video to watch one wrestler shitting another. Yeah.
Sincerely, the nail in the coffin for me, keeping on the Horseman.
Not literally.
No, was Arn Anderson doing his first shoot at the same weekend as All In, when he was kind of getting involved with AEW kind of thing, because like you know, this was the man who never let the mask slip ever, and also was part of like some of the biggest sort of storylines in wrestling. That was it for me, kind of thing. I know it was long past by that point, but like I can remember hearing that and going, "Oh wow," kind of thing. It kind of hit me a wee bit.
But even still to this day, I mean, one of the best things about a network, you can turn around and say, "I hate modern wrestling; it's rubbish." But in terms of like new content in the network, you've got the WWE Untold segment, which is phenomenal. They're absolutely incredible. You've got Austin's Broken Skull sessions. They're worth the network price alone, in my opinion. This kind of new stuff.
I would agree with that.
you guys watch the photo shoot ones as well, where basically they get the guy or the woman like that to basically sitting, and then they'll show them a photo from the past, and then the guy will basically sit in the chair and give context to it. It's really, really good. The one with Dustin Rhodes and all that, when he's talking about driving in the car next to Dusty and all that, and he starts getting all emotional on that. It's really, really good. Strongly would advise checking that out. In front of enough talking of Dustin.
Just for a disclaimer, we do not get paid by WWE Network, which is currently $9.99. But Vince, if you're watching, or Buff, if you're watching,
you're either going to get putting over the fed to no end, or just Vince will not let workers unionise.
Well, we've spoken about this before. We spoke about the fact that Vince McMahon is the kind of guy who we should hate. We really should. He's not the kind of guy we should like as a person, and I love the man, but I shouldn't. He's like the devil.
Yeah,
literally.
I don't care for Vince McMahon, but we'll be poorer for having lost him.
I mean, I think the most evil thing Vince has done is crush the unions. Let's be honest, and that's saying something. And
I feel like when the time does eventually come, we'll find out that's probably the most evil thing Vince McMahon has done.
He's in it. Right, moving on to
allegedly,
main event, which is Sting Bulldog and the Natural Dustin Rhodes versus Sid, Ravishing Rick Rude, and Big Van Vader. Now,
look at you! Look at your face! Look at your face! Look at him!
I just want to say my shit. I want to get my shit in before we discuss this. Right? The test of a great match is never Meltzer or Alvarez or your 7 5/8 quarter stars. It's the crowd. There could have been a fire in this arena, and that crowd would not have been any more frenetic. I love this.
I'm struggling to work out who this final man was, because I also heard like Big Von Vader as well. Like no one seems sure what Vader's name was in the run up to this match.
Do you know what? I really enjoyed this match. This is one of the reasons I've said it's kind of a house show. It was like, let's just throw. I know they were all kind of feuding and stuff. But it was like, let's throw all the big stars in the match together.
Yeah,
and then cut down some time. But for me, the standout here was Rick Rude. He was absolutely incredible. There was a particular bit when he got tombstoned. I think it was Dustin tombstoned him, and his legs were shaking. His head hits the mat, and he just goes still.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
In the build-up as well, he nearly pulled Rick Rude's trousers down. And I thought we were going to see, like, Dick Rude. Those tights were going low, man.
I want a tag team. Dick Rude and Muff Bagwell in a shag team match. Sorry, Lewis.
No, I was going to say, was I watching this wrong, or did Sid actually do a kip up in this? Like, there's a bit.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
I'm still trying to get over the amount of puns Ollie's bringing to the table here. He's playing it really casual right now if you're watching on video, but I'm certain he's got a fucking Word document up that he's been working on like day and night.
I hate to tell you, man, all this shit is just off the cuff.
Oh.
You will present me with like the most open goal, and I'll be like, yeah, I guess, yeah, why not?
Would that be an off the cuff Bagwell?
That was terrible. It's a fucking juxtaposition. This is the type of match where you can't do anything but kind of just
you smack yourself
go over.
Yeah, psychology. It's a schmoz.
Yeah, it's I mean,
the best kind of schmoz.
You forget how incredibly strong Sting was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a guy. I mean, like, I'm not saying Sting didn't have a great look, but he didn't have a warrior type physique. He wasn't far off, let's be honest. But he wasn't. He was quite athletic. He was quite. I wouldn't say a high flyer, but he could jump about and stuff. And every so often, he just pull out this gorilla press slam. You're like, whoa, man, this guy, this guy's jacked.
I think that's the point, though. I mean, like, if you're a child, watch it. He ticks every box for you. He's got a mad as anything face get up going on. He's really colourful. What?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I prefer Surfer Guy Sting to Crow Sting. Controversial.
Yeah, I would actually go along with that.
Yeah, no, I would say so. I think if anything, Crow Sting is one of the most overplayed gimmicks. Like, it's like he had something of a. But at the same time, like, I know why he did it. Because Surfer Sting's like so full of youthful energy. Like, it would have seemed weird to kind of go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think when it comes to match quality, I'm Surfer Sting, but character-wise, I'm Crow Sting, and you're right, can you imagine, like, Surfer Sting rocking out a Survivor Series in his WWE debut, or AEW? Also, I never once saw Surfer Sting surf, so what's that about?
I think as well, I'm just going to completely ignore that. I think as well, with moving to the Crow gimmick as well, how much time did he really have with the Surfer gimmick as well? How long could he have stretched out being, the energetic, running in, youthful guy?
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, he stretched the Crow gimmick into WCW, into TNA, and obviously thereafter he had it going for absolute years.
Well,
and I just think
he's still doing it.
That gimmick
still doing
is
it. Well,
that gimmick is
he's
more
still
synonymous
doing it,
with
but he's-
him than Brandon Lee,
yeah,
arguably. But that's my opinion on it, and like the I'm not saying that because he done it at the exact right time. I understand his reasons for sticking with it for so long. He did try different things in TNA, and it definitely didn't work. Remember Joker Sting, yeah.
Joker Sting.
I mean, obviously, it's maybe just a bit too formulaic. It's maybe just a bit too formulaic. Like he goes, "What's that edgy dark film that's out right now? The Crow. Okay, I'll be the Crow. What's that edgy dark film that's out right now? The Batman. Okay, cool. I'll be the Joker." It didn't quite work again.
But it was also like, was that edgy dark film just now where the guy died?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Aye.
But according to legend, like it wasn't even Steve Botton's idea to do this thing. It was Scott Hall's suggestion. It's like the Surfer thing couldn't make a return in the late 90s. Because obviously the age of the kind of pessimism and Gen X and burned out.
According to the Nitro book, it wasn't actually Scott Hall. There was some WCW staffer, some makeup artist or that, some costume designer that claims he was actually the guy to come up with it. Scott Hall was credited for it. Sting has said Scott Hall. This guy said it's a lot of shite. He actually had all these designs and showed Sting it.
I think it did happen at the right time.
It was perfect. I mean, it was perfect. I mean, like Sting's Crow thing was like he came out to the ring, had the dark hair, but his makeup was a bit different. He had no idea what he was doing. He was off TV for ages, comes back up, and he's got the white and black makeup. He looked like the whole idea of the Crow is the avenging angel. That's what he was like for WCW. But he had the colours of the NWO, so people were like, what the hell's going on? And the character was so enigmatic, and they managed to draw it out for a year with Sting actually wrestling, and nobody even noticed in terms of like, this is getting dull now. The worst thing actually did was having wrestled.
WCW doesn't get the credit that it's worth. I mean, even at like what you've just said with Sting, but even like, let's put it this way: at this point, what we're reviewing right now is considered a low for wrestling as a whole, not just WCW. But look at the amount of players in the game that we're watching on this, again, arguable B pay-per-view that are just on fire, totally over, and contrast that with what's going on in Connecticut. Do you know what I mean? Like, the victors really do write history, in my opinion, because really, to me, WCW was doing everything right up until the point where corporate Warner Brothers just suddenly, Time Warner just went, no. And then that's what gave the Fed the chance to kind of get ahead. Now, obviously, they'd done a lot of things right to do that. It was amalgamation of loads of different moving parts. But I would argue personally that if I want to turn on, I wouldn't go back and rewatch Raw from the beginning. I wouldn't. But I am currently watching my way through WCW, and I'll move over to Nitro, and there'll be a couple of lows, but hell, I'll be able to get through it, whereas I couldn't say the same for the other product.
Well,
And here's an idea, like a Sting thing I want to touch on quickly. I think it was Unsettled 97, where it was like Team WCW versus Team NWO, and NWO just wiped the board. And as they're leaving the ring, the show's over. Like people are leaving the arena type thing. Sting descends for the rafters. But at this point, he's not laid a hand on anybody. So I think Scott goes out of the ring, and people are like, what's going to happen? Bobby Heenan's playing it brilliantly, saying, whose side are you on? Sting just cracks him. Place erupts. Macho Man gets cracked. Kevin Nash gets cracked, and Sting just picks his baseball bat up and points it at Hogan. Points it in the place. People are hanging for the ceiling at this stage, and he's not even really done anything.
I mean, do you remember we
you couldn't get that with Surfer Sting?
Yeah, no. We watched the episode of Nitro from '96, obviously the debut of the Outsiders. Like, I think Ollie brought it up, like how long was Surfer Sting actually around for? Like, the character very like quietly kind of downgraded, like especially when we saw him in '96. Like he was wearing like the green and pink face paint. He went back to the black hair. You know, it wasn't. But again, it's like tying into the Crow, obviously the Avenging thing. It was just such great storytelling that here's this character who's emblematic of what I like to call like blue and yellow era WCW, and by that time WCW had become this entirely different beast. And obviously, like the entire roster had pretty much changed, with the exception of like Flair and Anderson and a handful of others. And here's like the one guy that's going to stand up to this invading force, the NWO.
I mean, good Sting's the kind of guy that was Hogan and Warrior rolled into one, then became an Undertaker type character a few years later.
Yeah,
I mean, talk about a franchise player. You know.
There's a really, one of the biggest what ifs of WCW history is what if Magnum TA never had that car crash. And then not long after that, that is when Sting made his debut. And a lot of people say if it wasn't for, like, it was kind of a catalyst for WCW to look at Sting and go, right, here's the jetpack, we're going to strap it to you, and on you go, because he was a massive star from early on, just straight to the moon. The one thing I would say, you know, horrifically tragic what happened to Magnum TA, and he really deserved to be on top of the mountain at some point, but he never would have made that transition, ever. He was always going to be a product of 80s WCW, and even going into the early 90s, I think he probably would have struggled, but no one would have been able to have ride the wave better, I think, than Sting.
Quite literally. He's a surfer.
Allegedly.
It's crazy as well. He was asked to be the third man in the NWO and said no. And I'm so glad he did, because it worked out perfectly. I know Sting as a heel would have been something. It would have been something. It would have been a big deal. But Hogan's not going to come at Hogan's not going to come at the ring with fucking the Crow face paint, let's be honest.
I'd have paid good money to see Hogan as the Crow.
It's time for vengeance, brother.
What you gonna do when vengeance runs wild over you?
He's just hanging on the harness like that.
You see, he's hanging on the harness that's hulking up.
Did anybody else find Bulldog terribly out of place here? Like, I found him
incredibly. I found him incredibly pre-wellness jacked.
Is this not post cracked out SummerSlam?
Yeah. He got paid that him and Warrior got released.
I didn't find him out of place only because I'm vaguely aware of the whole storyline with Sting, Davey Boy, Vader, Sid. I don't know if it was before this or after this. It was about the same time. The whole Beach Blast thing when oh god, I'll just send the clip when the boat blew up. The wee cinematic video they went and did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. But I don't know. I like Davey Boy in this era, and
I think he was in dire need of a reinvention by this point, and obviously that would come via the Attitude Era when he does get to kind of rejoin the Fed and stuff. I mean, he'd always be Davey Boy Smith, but getting rid of the cornrows, kind of smartening himself up a little bit and getting back with the Hart Foundation, but as a heel, that brilliant kind of thing. But at this point, he is kind of like treading water, but at the same time, it's Davey Boy Smith. You know what I mean? You're not going to complain too much. I know he was a welcomed addition.
Yeah, I know he followed later on when he eventually did join WCW, but I would have loved to have seen how kind of Brett would have worked in this era at WCW. Like obviously him being that kind of smaller clinical type, psychologist. I would have loved to have seen him. Like just imagining him in Bulldog's place during this and seeing how he would have worked with. Well, I don't think he would have liked working with Vader, but yeah, it would have been fun to see how this would have went.
I think he probably would have enjoyed his work better in this time period. Well, not 1993. At certain points of his career, if he was with WCW. But to be honest with you, I don't think he took any missteps in his career, really.
No.
I mean, obviously, there's the event that shall not be named for
Promotional reasons.
lack of originality. But even when he joined WCW later, it wasn't necessarily his. It's not like the Fed had anything for him either.
No.
Sort of thing. So I mean, and we got to see some great matches that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. It's just a shame it ended in the way it did. But I would have liked to have seen him in a proper workers' company. But I mean, as much as I'm gushing over WCW, and they built guys well, and people were over, and they were doing good things. I can't see them. I can't see there being room for a star Bret the Hitman Hart at this point, when you've got people like Sting cutting about and whoever else, especially in the Deep South and being from Canada and all that.
It would have been too many cooks as well.
Yeah, which is what happened eventually anyway. So
yeah.
But I mean, if we're getting into the heel team of Vader, Sid, and Rude, I mean, any heel team that has two managers, you know you're in for good things. Harley and
one of them's Harley Race.
And Colonel Robert Parker.
So I rewatched this. And I have nothing to report on, sadly, but obviously there's loads of moments where you can hear Harley Race through the commentary microphones, and I'm like, please let there be a nugget here. Please. There must be some moment where he's just sort of looking about like, what the fuck is going on here? But unfortunately not. Harley Race in this era was great. It was at that point where he could still get a heel over, he would still take bumps as well, and he still had that name. It was a big deal for him to take a bump, or for someone to put a move on him, kind of thing. And plus he's just always deserved a pay packet for his contribution to the business and stuff like that. And Colonel Parker as well, obviously. I'm a big fan. I love that we have to mention the heel team, even though we're kind of done talking about this, just because we've not talked about Vader enough.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Vader and the fact that he doesn't even come out with the belt. How humble. He's announced as the world champion.
It's also quite sad as well, man, how many guys in that match are no longer here. And it's like,
not usually the case with WCW guys, but...
no.
Yeah, I know we can say that a lot when it comes to pay-per-views and that, but I mean, it's like there's guys that were taken away way too young,
you're a fucking mark when you call a heel humble. Jesus Christ.
You gotta be a mark for anybody, you gotta be a mark for Big Leon.
Big Daddy Leon.
Yeah, it's Big Daddy Leon. Right, getting into the actual main event, Flair and Anderson versus the Hollywood Blondes. Great.
Can I just say that seems like a straight? That's a great match, and I'm sure we'll say enough. We'll say plenty of good things about it. But I just want to start off a wee bit of a question of: was this really the main? Should this have been the main event? I know we have Flair and Anderson. We've also got the NWA World Champion. We've also got a fucking star these 6 man just before it. This seems like a strange main event for me, a tag team match.
It was a total sub main event that got moved to the end for no reason.
Right, so you need to remember that, I mean, I feel like we're looking at the co-main or that last match kind of in too much of hindsight. Like, we're looking at what the names became. Obviously, at the time, they're over and there's a star-studded match and whatever, but at the end of the day, Hollywood Blondes were red hot at this point, and also there were two guys that, under this management, they were happy to push to the moon. They really wanted to work with the former. It was like a meeting of eras. Like, it was like a match that had been built up to. It was a main event, and not only that, like I mentioned before, Rick and Arn did kind of have a storyline going on with Barry as well. Like, it's more integral to the week-to-week programming of the show, this match, as opposed to let's just fuck everyone in a match and see what happens, sort of thing.
Are you saying this felt like a clashing of eras? Because Schiavone actually literally says at one point, this is the 80s meeting the 90s.
No, because that is literally what the point of the match is. Like, I can't help but mention that.
To be fair, they couldn't have known it at the time, but Austin would go on to become the biggest thing of the 90s.
Well, no, I mean, you forget that under this management, Austin and Pillman were the guys. They were like 100% people that, I'm sorry guys, you'll need to leave me 1 second.
Oh, we've worked them into a shoot.
My dog's breaking in, sorry. I thought I was needed.
The Davy Boy's breaking at your house. He's having
Right, you. No,
Bagwell's come through.
I think the fact I think your senior kind of makes sense to what you're saying about the NWA championship match by the Windham, and the fact that by default the world title match should be the main event.
Sorry. I mean, I get. Right. Okay, I understand that.
But I agree what you're saying. You're right. Mm-hmm. It should be, but it's clearly not, and it's by no fault of Barry Windham or Tusko Scorpion. It's because that's how things are.
I think, to be honest with you, if they were actually keen on making sure that Barry had a successful run, regardless of what would be over with the crowd, they should put it on last, because you're making a statement then saying to the crowd, this is even more important than Flair and Arn versus the Hollywood Blondes. But the whole event really is built around that and the whole build up, so that's why it's the main event. It's just to get rid of that conversation.
I mean, it's quite funny in retrospect. We're talking about, Cammy, you mentioned the earlier history being written by the victors and that, but you watch all the Austin documentaries and all that was that, Austin got buried and, they had no plans for Austin, and Austin was, scraping by. I'm like, he's main event in a Clash of Champions. Like, he did okay. And he was a TV champion.
Again, but Austin, hold on. Austin is a victor. And let's remember that even within the context of the WWF, he paints himself as a good guy who done his best for the company. He was a politic and prick just like the rest of them. You know what I mean? Like, he had just as high an opinion of himself when he was in WCW as he did when he was at the top of WWF. And his, by the time that he came to the end of his tenure with WCW, you can go back and look, he's not in bad places in the card. Because, you know what I mean? It's just rewriting history. It's not how it went down.
No, I find on paper, I remember Austin was saying, I think this was recently actually, maybe with Jericho, when he was talking to Jericho, that he doesn't understand why the Hollywood Blondes were split up. And you could argue, well, that's what happens when tag teams when they're hot. You split them up and you get a lot of mileage at the 1-on-1 matches. But at the same time, why split up something that is genuinely working?
I think that it is the fault in the stars of what happens with tag teams is that inevitably one person flourishes while the other kind of flounders. And I mean, you're talking about Pillman and Austin. You know what I mean? It would have been really difficult to distinguish which horse you bet on at that point. And see, to be honest, I'd be betting on Pillman at that point. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'd bet on Pillman.
Yeah, because I mean, Austin worked in a very specific time period with a very specific gimmick that was very kind of true to himself, sort of thing, and it wouldn't come out until years later. Whereas at this point, he's playing someone from Hollywood really badly. He's just fantastic in the ring. This is like another hindsight thing where we're looking, going, it's Steve Austin, how can you be so silly? But really, you've got two horses and one of them's Brian Pillman. You bet on Pillman, and we all kind of know how that went, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think I remember watching mid-90s WCW before the whole Stone Cold era, when I was younger, Because I remember when I first watched Steve Austin as a Stone Cold, I was like, is that the same? Is that the guy for WCW with the blonde hair? Stunning. You're a wee guy, you think to yourself, is this the same person though? You know, as Ultimate Warrior, the same guy came back at WrestleMania 8, that type of thing. But I was the same. I remember thinking the whole time, yeah, Pillman's a better wrestler here. So is Marty Jannetty. You win lunch, you win some, you lose some. But I don't think for a second Austin's bad in this era. I don't think anybody is.
No. That's the problem, though. It's in the context of here. Who do you choose? And
you do choose Pillman. You do choose Pillman.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention this about Austin's work. I mean, obviously, everyone remembers by the time he kind of climbed to the top of the mountain in the Fed, he obviously had the broken neck, and he had more or less 10 or 12 years of mileage on him. When he's just starting out in WCW, I mean, he's running but like mad. I mean, people forget just how good Austin was as a technician, like in the early days.
It's a shame. He
had to change up his style. Yeah, he based a lot of his.
It's a shame, but we discussed this before. And I will fucking stand by this. Austin would not be Austin if he didn't break his neck, because you wouldn't have had the McMahon thing.
No, and to see the Stone Cold character like running the ropes and all that, it wouldn't have connected the same. He was better based his stuff off that kind of Jerry Lawler, like Memphis style, like everything's kind of that way. Yeah, but
I mean, I was watching Raw. I was watching Raw last year in front of an empty arena. They Thunderdome type kind of fan type things, an empty arena. Austin came out, done a promo to empty seats. They even made a joke about it because they would say, "Give me a hell yeah."
Yeah.
And it was over.
Yeah. No. Reminded me quite like of the Eric Andrews show, a bit Lynchian, man. It was quite a bit at the same time. It was one of the funniest things that they've done in that entire sort of, what do you call it, the performance center era?
Yeah.
And it's just a testament to the guy. So creative. But I feel like that creativity wasn't actually unlocked until he broke his neck and he had time to go home and kind of sit and think, wow, what am I going to do? What am I going to fall back on here? Especially given that, like we've kind of mentioned already tonight, workhorse is a better word to use for Steve Austin at this point than anything else. Not charismatic man that you put all your money on for as being the face of the company. Workhorse, steady hand, these type of phrases. So imagine like kind of your biggest asset being taken away from you. You're going to reinvent yourself as this big character. I mentioned before. Sorry, yeah.
No, it's just these mannerisms, and it's like obviously when he and Anderson are tying up, he starts doing this, it's basically just throwing Anderson off and Coleman flat and all that.
Talking in the middle of stuff things as well, calling them old men and laughing at them and stuff. It was that's what I was going to say just before we start talking about this match again, because we have to. The reason so I'm doing all this from memory. I watched it 3 weeks ago, and the reason I watched this 3 weeks ago is because me and a few of my grappling buddies, we always try to sort of like lure people into the professional wrestling world with certain things, and one of them was just the only reference they had was ECW 2006 or Stone Cold Steve Austin The Rock, and then we were like, well, yeah, come see Steve Austin now. So we watched this match, and it didn't disappoint.
I didn't want to knock anybody off their role, but I just find it really fucked that Steve Austin has hair here. I was just distracted through the whole match that he's got a head of hair, and it's one of those you have to focus your eyes.
Yeah,
I was like, so I have to focus my eyes and remember that is Stone Cold Steve Austin with the blonde hair.
He might as well be a teenager. It's like thin neck Steve Austin.
I could be wrong here, but I'm sure they had an angle with the Hollywood Blondes and Arn Anderson where they were taking the piss out of Arn Anderson for his age. But it was something like 35. It was something ridiculous.
Was born like that.
Yeah. There's a baby faced, not baby face, but a baby faced promo from 1985 of Arn Anderson. It's one of his most famous promos when he walks on and introduces himself as the heel Arn Anderson to the WCW audience when he's got a New York Yankees cap and he's like, fuck Southerners, even though he clearly is one, pretended to be from Minnesota. Don't want to toot my own horn, but toot. That's the youngest he's ever looked, and within 6 months of being on the road with Ole, he's forever looked like a fucking 50-year-old.
I mean, fair enough. He hasn't aged that much in the time since, I think, since like, 1980 to 2020. There's probably been about, good 2-3 years of aging.
Yeah, but the minute he looks at that portrait in his attic, he's fucked.
He loves his grub. Like it's hilarious how even when he was a road manager they call them nowadays, a
Road
producer, a road agent.
Yeah.
There's a great video of him doing his slam to who's the guy that likes to pretend to be Shawn Michaels and had sex with Sonny Ziggler.
Shawn Michaels.
he does his slam to Ziggler, and this is like 6 months from it before he gets it's like the second he got canned, he was like, I'm going to find that scene from Parks and Recs when he walks up to a diner and goes, give me all the eggs and bacon you have. That's Arn Anderson getting quit. Like, you could have said Arn Anderson 5 minutes after getting sacked from the Fed. You may have heard me say, give me a lot of eggs and bacon. What I said was, give me all the eggs and bacon you had. He's a man after my own heart. You know what I mean? Like, he's a man after my own heart. He forever looked like he could throw anyone about like a wet tracksuit.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with Arn Anderson is, like, every larger guy has tried to copy the Spinebuster at one point, and not fucking one of them has been able to do them as fluid and as silky as him.
Interestingly enough, there's one person that I will say has came close to, maybe not as silky and smooth, but devastating. It's Ron Simmons.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to say Triple H. I was like, oh no.
I was going to say Buff Bagwell, but...
Yeah. About to say on that, I do like that, again, Triple H does the double A spine buster, but usually when he does it, his quad explodes. But you see, again, it's one of those, side by side, it's like, yeah, he's done the double A spine buster. That's a nice wink, and he's a scholar of the game.
You just can't do it in the close proximity of Kevin Nash, or his quad will explode. Yeah.
But you just see Arn Anderson do it, and there's just so much power going through it.
It's we've given Ole a lot of crap, but the true reason that Arn is who he is because of Ole. You know what I mean? There's so many stories that Arn has, like, and he almost like doesn't give Ole enough credit, I would say, like, because he only mentions them so many times, but it's just because it's tough to talk about him without being negative, unfortunately. But the amount of shit it sounded like Ole would give Arn on a week-to-week basis over how he should work, it kind of just, not only did it influence Arn, but everyone that kind of Arn kind of touched through it, like going on. There's a reason he was in the position with the Fed that he was for so long. It's because he's just so damn good at putting a match together. And this is a testament to it. I think I've said it before because he's definitely in my top 5, but the one thing I would say, he is to me the greatest to never hold a number 1 spot belt.
Yeah. To
me, 100%.
He's definitely a contender for my Mount Rushmore, to be honest. Just because he's hard. I don't know how to describe it, but obviously it's wrestling. They're all meant to be hard. But you look at Arn Anderson, and he's just fucking hard, man. It's every era of Arn Anderson, he just looks. If I could look like anyone, I'd look like Arn Anderson.
Even when he dressed like your dad going to the golf, circa 1996.
He looks hard.
Oh my God. The testament to the man that he could be standing next to Ric Flair, Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and still look like the one that's about to actually knock all he is out without the rest of them having to move forward is a testament to the man. Like that's what the enforcer, you know.
Yes, he's not the kind of guy that's going to like front and talk shit in the pub and that in a fight break. So he's the kind of guy, if a fucking Barney kicks off, he's going to just sit and casually finish his pint, walk up, stick the nut in the biggest guy there and walk out the pub.
You know that bit in The Simpsons when Drederick Tatum is sitting eating jelly at the riot and he goes, "Hey, come on, guys, shut up." That's Arn Anderson, WCW locker room circa 1985.
This is a guy who Sid is about twice the size of Arn Anderson, twice the width, an absolute beastie guy, and still took scissors to batter him.
Yeah.
I thought
it's good you couldn't fucking step to him.
Cammy, I thought you were going to invoke the episode where Marge starts the pretzel business, and it's the
To be
Yakuza Fat Tony.
Japan. That's
There's a
what I
little
was going
guy
to say.
and Homer's
That's
like,
what we were going to
"Little
say.
guy hasn't done anything yet, and you know it's going to be good." And then he closes the door, and there's just like 3 dropkick sound effects.
There's a
Good match,
reason.
though.
Wait, let's put it this way, right? The man with the biggest shadow in professional wrestling, Ric Flair, had to stand behind Arn Anderson come any confrontation.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
That's it. That's your soundbite right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone. I'm just going to say this in closing. I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but the tag belts that Pillman and Austin have to look fuck all alike. One of them is very clearly different from the other. You actually watch it.
It's WCW, right? Come on, give
It's
them
one of
some
those,
slack.
like, the respect they gave the belts in this pay-per-view was just fucking ridiculous.
Did they not imply that the US title was locked up in a Halliburton briefcase?
One thing I forgot to mention in the 6-man tag match was at the end, at the finish, when they're about to powerbomb Davey Boy. Obviously, Vader's got him up. All the camera is on is just Rick Rude holding this briefcase. But the powerbomb gets done and everything. Davey Boy's laid out, and you just got Rick Rude holding the briefcase, and it's just like it's obviously important.
This is a great show, but the lack of respect for the belts is unbelievable. Orndorff forgot to bring the belt. Vader forgot to bring the belt. The US title's locked up in a briefcase, and the 2 tag titles don't even look alike.
It looks like I made Barry Windham's nameplate.
It's Windham.
There's a bit where the ref holds the belt up before the match and it cuts to the hard cam and you can still read the fucking thing. And it's not even been HD touched up or anything. It's
Man,
like, Barry Windham.
Eagle. You've got the Windham Eagle.
That was at the bottom of the PDF file, that one, Ollie.
Yeah.
It's been phasing around 20 minutes in. I mean, he's working.
I've run out of lines, man.
Yeah, man, this was a great show. I loved it, honestly. I can't wait to do next week. Well, not next week, but the week after next week, Clash of Champions 25.
I'm already looking for. To be honest, I'd be happy if we just carried on like doing an Odyssey.
Yeah, became what a heel turn to go from an in your house podcast to a Clash of Champions. What a middle finger to the Fed.
I think it shows growth and maturity. we can't watch a fucking hog match or a evening gown jelly pudding match. We have to watch Ron Simmons power slamming someone and just like start golf clapping.
Yeah,
but it's also a testament of total like heel arrogance to rebrand your podcast from In Your House to Champions. But if we watch too much WCW, Vince might just bring it back.
We've had the.
They brought back War Games. They brought
back In Your House.
Did they bring back
Star Games? Starcade was a C show, a D show. I don't even know what you call it. It's a house show.
It was a house show. It was a literal house show.
Such a slap in the face.
War Games is good though.
Is good. Aye, but then it's because it's a part of NXT, guys. Come on.
I know, but we need to remember NXT is still part of the Fed.
Yeah, I guess so.
It still is. You know, I mean, people. Yeah. I remember genuinely people on Twitter a few years ago saying, "I'm done with WWE. I'm just going to watch NXT." I'm like, you do realise?
Although maybe, I suppose with that, it is a comment on who's running NXT and who's running the Fed.
No. I get that. I totally get that. Yeah. But it's not as if Vince isn't profiting. It's not you can boycott him.
I think if you do anything to do with wrestling these days, Vince is making money off it.
He's probably winning off his podcast.
It's important.
He won't be even his Cammy if he's let sucker comments.
Tinfoil hat time, because I've not mentioned it on the podcast and just in the private chat. Again, I'm one of these guys that believes Vince owns AEW. Just going to put it out there. I think there's going to be a big swerve one day. I'm certain of it. Just going out. Yeah. Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's one of those where I'm like, nah, probably not. But yeah,
but I think it's got like a Mission Impossible style swerve when like Tony Khan pulls a mask off and it's Shane.
It's a private company, so we can't actually look into the books to see who's paying the bills. You know what I mean? Like, just I just think it is. Sorry.
I love how we all discuss like, like Paul has to hide it inside his blazer, like when he's walking past them. Like, what have you got there, Paul? Nothing.
Just another WCW pay-per-view I'm about to rip off.
What's that Tommaso Ciampa guy all but nothing? You can't have him.
I watched this thing called NXT. Can we buy them? No, Vince. No. We can't buy them. We can't really do anything with them.
I'm just going to steal more of their stars.
I read something. Yeah, Paul's just handing Vince like contracts. It's like, look, we've signed this guy.
It's the keys to NXT, and then he's like distracting them with like a contract.
I read something. It was obviously very recent, but Tony Khan. I don't know if it was a shoot interview or what. He was very, very positive on Vince as well. And in a very, I can't remember the exact quote. I'll find it because I didn't realize we were going to go on to this. But it was one that didn't really show competition or bitterness. It was more, he's a really great guy. He's done a lot of wrestling. I'll find it because maybe there's something.
Vince McMahon okayed AEW's biggest star to go on his network and have a shoot podcast with his biggest star ever.
Excuse
Vince
me.
also phoned Paul Big Show. The Big Show said, "I'm leaving to go to AEW." Vince said, "Good. I think you'll do well for them. I think you'll help their company. I think you'll be good for them." He doesn't see AEW's competition. He just sees them. There was a time when Vince would look and go, "This independent random house show in fucking Illinois in a bingo hall. I must crush them and own them." Now he's like, AEW, what do you want?
It's because he owns them, Thomas.
It's either he owns them or obviously the guy's worth like $3 billion and probably makes like 100 times the like median US wage just in like Austin 316 shirts.
I genuinely hope by default it means Vince McMahon owns film.
Did you see the news that so obviously like NXT had to change evenings and everyone's pretending it's because of the Wednesday Night Wars, but in reality it's because football's coming back. Did you see that the same thing might be happening to AEW and they're going to have to change evenings as well? just after they finish their victory lap, like it's like reportedly they have to change evenings too, and they're just like finger gunning in the picture, like
It's that meme of the guy like on the third place thing. He's got the big bottle of champagne and he's just like middle fingers over there. Like Vince and Paul are on positions 1 and 2.
Is that
it's a meme of the guys like us. That's Jericho.
Jericho's probably the most cleverest one out of the fucking lot of them, isn't he?
Definitely. Yeah.
Man, honestly.
Daft, that boy's no daft.
No, he's really clever. I can't wait for his Hall of Fame induction.
He's
probably so good, he could get inducted into the Hall of Fame while still under contract to AEW.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
Who's going to induct him? Alex Jones?
If this is like a repeating of the late 90s, and obviously the E is the Feds and AEW is WCW, I'm trying to figure out what the ECW equivalent of it is, because obviously we haven't heard from Ring of Honor in a while.
TNA?
Probably NXT.
Impact, actually you're right, Ollie, that would probably be the closest thing.
No, I would say it's probably NXT. NXT is probably the equivalent.
But NXT does fall.
No, I know. I get that, but that's probably your closest.
Hey, no, come on. Funded quietly by the WWE.
Well.
Group of die-hard fans. Guys that are fighting just a little bit too snug and doing what they can to put themselves out there. I think it's pretty damn close, son. Yeah. Set this in Florida. Figure that one out. Bit of a contrast to Philly.
Yeah. Until next time.
See you later. Goodbye.
Farewell.